following is a presentation of HBO Sports.
Here is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
I remember he walked out.
He sat down in a chair. If you look at it, you see this big smile come on his face. After all he's been through, he's free.
Here is the 7th annual All-American High School basketball team. 7-foot Lou Alcindor of New York's Power Memorial Academy.
In the 3 years that Wooden coached Alcindor, they won 3 consecutive national championships.
Get down, get up out of your seat.
With the flip of a coin today, the Milwaukee Bucks won the most important draft pick in the history of the NBA. The prize is the sensational Lou Alcindor from UCLA.
So it's Abdul-Jabbar and Abdul-Kareem.
Kareem, skyhook up, and LA wins the world title.
There may be no athlete who was ever better suited for the game of basketball than Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. There may be no man who's ever had a more complicated relationship with what it gave him.
Now, what is this all about? You know, you come up to me, you greet me if you know who I am. When you start asking for an autograph, that makes me something other than real. We got to split.
Wait, don't split yet. Just sign this here.
You know, you become bigger than what you really are. You know, I'm just a person just like any other person.
He wanted to play football, but he wasn't a football type. You know, he was too tall and stringy, so we convinced him that he shouldn't play football, he should play basketball.
I didn't know anything about basketball at the time, you know, I was a complete novice.
Very first time I dunked a basketball was in 8th grade. Ball hit the ground one time, and I picked it up right in stride and took one step and dunked it. Everybody went nuts in the gym. The other team was devastated. They were unable to play for about 2 minutes. You know, they couldn't get the ball over the half court. Everybody was stoked that they'd seen a school kid dunk a basketball. You know, I was like, wow, that was neat. Still remember it to this day. It's very vivid.
He was this incredible young talent who we started hearing about literally when he was in 8th grade. There's this kid. And then this kid was, you know, Lou Alcindor.
He was like the tallest 8th grader in the world, and he was playing basketball in New York.
By the time I got out of the 8th grade in the spring, I was 6'9". In May, I could walk through the house and not hit my head. In August, I was hitting the top of my head on the doorway.
You're growing so quick. You're feeling a little awkward. You're feeling, how do you fit in? What does it mean to be a misfit? What does it mean to be kind of pushed to the margins? Because physically, you are towering.
He just couldn't get used to people walking up to him and commenting, you know, and making jokes about it. And I think that's when he started to get sort of standoffish.
The tall kid who was the talk of the city lived in the Upper Manhattan neighborhood of Inwood. He'd been born Ferdinand Louis Alcindor Jr. in 1947, the only child of Cora, a seamstress, and Al, a police officer and part-time musician.
My mom was from North Carolina and had that Southern graciousness and congeniality of the South. Being an only child really helped put her focus on me. My dad's background is from the West Indies, which is very Victorian, you know, and kind of, you know, buttoned up. My dad never displayed any emotion. You know, he's always very wrapped up and hardly said anything. It affected me my whole life because I thought that was why people respected my dad. My dad was a jazz musician. My dad had had his way. He would have played in Count Basie's band. He would have been the happiest guy in the world. The very first time I went to a jazz club, my dad took me. We went to see Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. Dad knew Art, and Art was astounded. And he said, "This is the kid that you had in the stroller?" Because, you know, at that point I was 7 feet tall.
While jazz clubs offered rare bonding opportunities with his father, among his peers, he found height wasn't the only thing that set him apart.
You had an interesting thing in your book. It sounds strange for the rest of us. When you first realized to yourself that you were black.
One of the kids had a Polaroid camera. We had some kind of party at class, and they took a picture of us all. And, you know, they passed the picture around. I said, "Wait a minute, I'm the dark guy."
You didn't live in Harlem, but that's where you went to have fun, hang out.
Socialize. Because I couldn't socialize with people. The kids that I knew real well, being the kids that I went to school with, were Irish and Italian, and they didn't really feel like socializing. They were better than I was. So I socialized with Afro-Americans in my neighborhood, and I'd go down to Harlem and have fun, play basketball.
They told me being able to shoot the hook shot would really benefit me as I was playing the center. So I started practicing hook shots all the time. The school custodian gave me the key to the gym. I would go in there and work after hours. I'd be the only one in the gym.
When it came time for high school, every coach in the city dreamed of the 7-foot prodigy playing for them, including Jack Donahue of Power Memorial, who offered him a scholarship and sold him on the Catholic school's strong academics, as well as its basketball program.
When we went over to get uniforms for our very first game, they gave me a varsity uniform, and I didn't expect that. We played Erasmus Hall. They just whipped our ass, man. It was ridiculous. You know, I'm 14 years old, but probably I was a lot closer to 12 than I was to 16. I'm in the locker room, and I start crying, and I remember I looked up, and all the other guys on the team were looking at me like I had just stepped off of a spaceship. And I realized that I'm in the big world now, and I can't cry like a little boy. And from that point on, I always had my game face on. I never, ever gave away any emotional vulnerability to anybody, and from that point on until I retired.
High school basketball was as popular as college ball and as the Knicks were. You had sensational teams. And then Lou Alcindor comes on the scene, and we had a huge, literally, hero. Watching him play, you know, he was a condor. His wingspan was so amazing.
You read everything about him and heard everything about him and how team was preparing for him using broomsticks and mops.
At that point in time, if there was one high school basketball player in America that was known, it was Lou Alcindor.
Here is the 7th annual All-American High School basketball team. 7-foot, quarter-inch Lou Alcindor, 15-year-old sophomore at New York's Power Memorial Academy, who reminds everybody of Wilt Chamberlain.
It was 1963, and you know, at that point, I think every kid in America wanted to be on TV somehow, some way. And I'm on national TV. It was pretty amazing. My dad took pictures of the TV while I was on it and stuff like that. It was like a teenager whose dreams are coming true.
His years at Power would be the start of a close lifetime relationship with his high school coach. But there was one night when even Jack Donahue would reveal an insensitivity that shook his impressionable star to the core.
We were getting ready to go to play DeMatha. It was a big game. I wasn't really focused on the game. I was loafing. And Coach Donahue said that the way you're playing, lazy and not focused, someone would say that you were playing like the N-word. The stereotype for black people that they were lazy and unmotivated. It affected me in that you never know who's gonna call you that, you know? He was the last person I would have thought would ever use that word.
I was stunned by it. I didn't think that Jack had any kind of racist feelings.
He did not say what he said because he was a racist. He said what he said because he was frustrated in not seeing me give my best effort and wanted to shock me out of it. And he went too far.
High school may not have completely shielded Alcindor from certain realities of life, but uptown in Harlem, there was another court that offered a very different scene and a whole new kind of exposure.
This is the original Rucker Park. People from all over Harlem would come to see the games that were played on the weekends. There'd be people totally choking the sidelines. I was lucky being 7 feet tall, I could see over everybody.
Nigga tall as hell. That's not Kareem Abdul, right? That's not Kareem Abdul, right?
I first met Wilt Chamberlain right here on the original Rucker Court. I was in the 8th grade. I was almost as tall as he was at that point. And it was finally my opportunity to meet my hero.
At the time, Chamberlain played for the NBA's Philadelphia Warriors, but lived in New York. And soon, the towering presence was letting the 7-foot teenager tag alongside him around town.
He kind of like took me under his wing. Some of the things that Wilt did, sometimes it bothered me. I got on an elevator with Wilt, and as the elevator's going down, some guy gets on and says, "Oh, wow, how's the weather up there?" He said that to Wilt. Wilt spat on the dude and said, "It's raining." And I was like, oh my God, you know, what is all of this about? Wilt had some beautiful suits. I took them home, I tried it on. The suits didn't fit, but they were beautiful and they were from Wilt, so I wanted to keep them. But he had partied in them and sweated through them and they didn't smell too good. My mom said, we can't keep these, and we had to throw them out. Everywhere he went, he was interested in meeting new young ladies that were beautiful. He had one girlfriend from Denmark that I was like in love with, but I'm 15 years old, I have zero chance. I didn't try to put any moves on him, but I was like wishful thinking, you know. Everybody said that as a center, I wasn't gonna make it in basketball because I was not a big bruising type like Wilt. I wanted to see if I could do it. You know, I wanted to see if I could challenge the success of Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain. I wanted to go beyond all of them.
1964 threatens to be a very explosive year.
Alcindor's basketball ambitions were growing at a tumultuous breaking point in history. And even as a teenager, he grasped it. He joined Power's debate team and spent the summer of 1964 with a Harlem program to develop promising young black leaders.
Midsummer brought to the sweltering Negro areas a new phase of racial relations. In Harlem, the funeral of a teenager who had been shot by a policeman set off demonstrations against police brutality.
I was taking the train home. I decided to stop off in Harlem and see what was happening, and just got out on 125th Street, and it was like crazy. I stepped into this big whirlpool of violence. Bottles are being thrown, you hear gunshots, glass breaking. When you see people being murdered and beaten, it makes you angry. It makes you want to affect change.
When you think of the impact of the Harlem riots on a 17-year-old, highly sensitive, highly reflective young black brother, I would think the first thing that hit him was, what are the roots of this rage? And how does it connect to me?
Lou is a 7-foot 1-inch phenomenon, showing his prowess as he leads his team to its third consecutive New York Catholic high school title. Alcindor in the post is almost unstoppable, as you can see.
In 4 years at Power Memorial, Lou Alcindor's teams won 95 games and lost just 6. He justified the massive expectations that had been growing since he was in junior high school. And that turned him into perhaps the most celebrated college recruit in basketball history.
Any basketball coach that had not heard of Louis Alcindor isn't doing much of a job of coaching.
Being the most sought-after high school player in the country was pretty intense. It got to the point that year where Coach Donahue said, any school that has a basketball program, you can go there on a scholarship. But the South was out. I did not want to go to school in the South. I did not want to be the first black athlete to go to any program in the South. That would have been just a whole lot more pressure.
He was impacted by the civil rights movement. He was impacted by race. He began to cultivate, a real opinion about things at a lot younger age than I did. I was just playing basketball.
I went out to UCLA, palm trees, and the grass was growing, and it was like, wow. I got a letter from Jackie Robinson. Hey, UCLA is the place to go, get a great education, and basketball program's first rate. Coach Wooden was very clear that he wanted me to stay at UCLA for 4 years and get my degree, and that's what I wanted to do.
The best player in the country was heading to Los Angeles to join the 2-time defending national champions. The announcement came at a press conference in the Power Memorial Gym on May 4th, 1965.
What was the big factor of choosing UCLA over St. John's?
Well, it wasn't that UCLA was better or anything like that. It's just it had what I wanted.
Which is what?
Well, it has the big college atmosphere. It's it's just a nice place, and I like the people.
You're 18 and your dad's a cop. Your mom is like on you all the time. Coming out here was like just a welcome break.
First time I'd gone to school with females. Wow.
Kareem was a ladies' man, yeah. He had skills. When you were from New York, you played basketball. I mean, everybody wanted to get to know who you were.
Our social life on the weekend was us hopping in a car, and Kareem with the knees up above his ears because he couldn't fit in the car with the fellas very well. And we drive down Sunset Strip and whistle at the girls. Party would come to us. We'd smoke pot. It was fun.
I started to see what Southern California was all about.
Life out on the coast agreed with the kid from New York. And on the court, there was an instant attraction to his new coach's approach.
When I met John Wooden, I was very impressed with him because for someone as successful as he was a very humble man and very reserved. And, having lived with my father my whole life, I was kind of used to authority figures having that kind of demeanor. Coach Wooden enabled us to understand that the most important aspect of the game was winning. It wasn't about what any individual did.
As a freshman, NCAA rules prohibited him from playing on the varsity. But in an exhibition game in the fall of 1965, he famously offered a hint of just how impressively he'd dominate the college game.
His freshman team beat the UCLA varsity when the UCLA varsity was the defending national champions.
We freshmen beat the varsity every day. So when the game time came around, we didn't worry about losing. They were worried about losing.
Many a promising young man comes to Hollywood hoping to become a star. Very few make it. But here's one who at the age of 19 and barely a year out of high school has made it and made it big. But then everything about this young man is big. His name is Lou Alcindor. He's 7 feet 1 3/8 inches tall. Now, in his first varsity season, he is the most photographed, most talked about player in a decade.
I realized how big a figure I was on campus when Sports Illustrated came out in December of '66. I'm on a fold-out cover. UCLA is expected to win the NC2A championship.
He got 56 in his debut, right, against SC, and that was man-to-man, and that's the last man-to-man he saw in 3 years.
He was unstoppable in college, absolutely unstoppable.
There was nothing in college like Lou Alcindor.
To see this superhero come out and play basketball, every game he ever played in, he was the focal point.
In his first year on the varsity, UCLA went undefeated on their way to the national championship. The sophomore center was a phenomenon, even if he didn't always appear comfortable in the role.
I doubt if ever a team in the history of intercollegiate athletics has been under such great pressure, and I doubt if any individual has ever been under any more pressure than Louis Alcindor.
There was such an intense demand from the media to interview us. Coach Wooden told us not to talk to the press. So I developed some suspicion there, kind of saw them as something that could go wrong.
People quote me as saying one thing, and then they feel that that's all I have to say. And that's not necessarily how it is. I'm a young man out here trying to get my education. You know, that's right. Why I'm here. And so far, everything is going well as far as that's concerned, and that's what's most important.
It was just the start of a long and wary relationship with the press. But in the near term, a very different controversy would emerge in the fall of 1967, when the NCAA announced it was banning the dunk. The organization cited injury concerns as the reason, but the overwhelming sense was otherwise.
Given the glorification of the dunk in our age, it is hard for anyone under the age of 40, I guess, to imagine a period of time in which it was an evil act. The number one reason we all assumed was the dominance of one person.
They're clearly trying to neutralize Lou Alcindor and UCLA.
There wasn't a whole lot of white guys doing a lot of dunks. So I thought there might have been a racial element to it. I didn't know for sure. I still don't.
Whatever the reasons behind the ban, it only forced Alcindor to hone the rest of his game. And by the halfway point of his junior season, the Bruins had stretched their winning streak to 47 games, which turned a January 20th matchup with the also undefeated Houston Cougars into a showdown of unprecedented proportions in the sport. They would call it the game of the century.
You wanted to have that moment with Lou Alcindor. You wanted to be able to go against him. His star was shining bright in the heavens, and my goal is to take his star out and put mine up there.
But in the week before the game, a scratched cornea kept Alcindor off the court.
Houston game is very possible. It's just a question of time. If my eye heals in time, I'll be able to play.
We're glad you're with us from the Astrodome. Over 52,000 fans. The largest paid audience to ever see basketball anywhere at any level.
Hayes, number 44, was battling head-to-head with UCLA's Lou Alcindor. Alcindor, suffering from an injury to his left eye, missed many shots he usually made.
He had a patch over his eye. We were thinking that was only a ploy.
It's amazing that Lou Alcindor can even play tonight after the eye injury, 4 days in the hospital. Alcindor, blocked by Hayes. The Big E brings the Texans out of their feet.
Elvin Hayes came out and had just an awesome game. We could not guard him.
There's the man they want to get it to. It's Hayes.
The game lived up to every expectation, and a pair of free throws in the final minute from Hayes would determine the outcome.
When that horn sounded, oh, wow, we had beat the unbeatable.
After losing that game and seeing the Sports Illustrated cover, it says Big E over Big Lou. I taped it in the back of my locker, and so every day I got to see that. I was determined that the next time, if we got to play University of Houston again, I wouldn't have a bad game.
The loss was stunning, but UCLA rebounded to close out the regular season with 12 straight wins. And in the NCAA tournament, reached the Final Four easily, with which gave Alcindor another shot at Hayes and now top-ranked Houston.
The basketball giants prepare for their long-awaited rematch. The Bruins vowed to reverse their only loss in 2 years and prove that the honors heaped on Houston were premature. The Cougars quickly realized that this is a different Lou Alcindor than the one they controlled in the Astrodome.
They had no chance to win that game. It was over before the first half was over.
The Bruins of UCLA put on perhaps one of the greatest performances ever seen in collegiate basketball.
One night later, UCLA routed North Carolina to capture their second straight national title.
The 78-55 UCLA win is the most one-sided victory in NCAA title game history. But that's what happens when you play Alcindor and company.
I'd like to thank everybody for all the support they gave us this season. It was lots of fun playing for you. Of course, you know, you got out on Friday and Saturday night, and we had to work.
9 top Negro athletes meet with Cassius Clay to discuss his anti-draft stand. They include Bill Russell, Lou Alcindor, and former pro footballer Jimmy Brown.
In the spring of 1967, the so-called Ali Summit in Cleveland marked the public arrival of the 20-year-old Alcindor as a black athlete set on making an impact beyond the sports arena.
If you're in a racist society and you're being discriminated against, it's up to you to do something for yourself.
And I've seen the promised land.
When Martin Luther King was assassinated a year afterwards, Alcindor joined protests on the UCLA campus.
We stood along Bruin Walk. You know, there was about 40 or 50 activists. It was interesting, the reaction a lot of people had to me participating. It was like, hey, you play basketball, you're gonna go play in the NBA and make a lot of money. What are you demonstrating about? It was offensive that they would think that because I had the opportunity possibly to play in the NBA that I shouldn't be concerned about the way Black Americans are treated and the denial of our basic human rights.
Through all the turbulence of the times, Alcindor found in his coach a mentor he could confide in. But as John Wooden confided in a letter he wrote, the burden his young star was bearing was concerning. I have seen him hurt so much by the remarks of white people. I have heard remarks within his hearing such as, "Hey, look at that big black freak." I am truly afraid that he will never find any peace of mind.
"1969 marks the end of an era. In the 3 years that Wooden coached Alcindor, they won 3 consecutive national championships. No big man has ever dominated the sport in the Alcindor manner.
Alcindor went an astounding 88-2 in his UCLA varsity career, and then, with a degree in history in hand, readied for the next chapter.
Every year in basketball or in athletics, be it football or hockey or whatever it might be, good players come along. But a player the caliber of Lou Alcindor, he does not come along every year.
He was certain to be the first overall selection in the 1969 NBA draft, and his destination would be determined by a coin flip.
The Suns and the Milwaukee Bucks, last-place finishers in the East, were the participants in the famous flip. Here's the way it went.
Phoenix, I call heads. The coin has come up tails.
With the flip of a coin today, the Milwaukee Bucks won the most important draft pick in the history of the NBA. The prize is the sensational Lou Alcindor from UCLA.
It was assumed that whoever got him was going to have makings of a championship team.
The second pick ended up being Neil Walk, who was a nice player, but, you know, you're talking about Lou Alcindor at the time? Come on. If you want to go to a place and have your goosebumps retread, Milwaukee in the wintertime would be a good place.
For me to go to Milwaukee was really a step away from everything that I knew.
I was thinking to myself, wow, what is this going to do for this community, this city, this state, to have a player like Lou Alcindor come in here, and a team that was really just a very young, fledgling team.
Hello again, everyone. I'm Jerry Gross, and welcome to the Lou Alcindor NBA debut. This is his first professional basketball game, and the whole country has waited for it.
There he is, working one-on-one against Bellamy.
His first shot. It's Alcindor on his first attempt from the field.
The numbers really do speak for themselves. We jumped from 27 to 56 wins, and now we have a lot of national following in terms of writers, TV, video crews. People were excited to see Lou Alcindor.
Still, even with their new superstar, the team, in just its second year of existence, had undeniable holes in the backcourt.
The point guard position really was a position that we needed to improve. After my rookie year, the people on the Bucks organization said, "We're going to try and get Oscar." And I said, "Well, geez, he's kind of old, isn't he?"
In fact, at age 31, Oscar Robertson was arguably the best guard in the NBA, a former league MVP and 10-time All-Star. But when he was acquired by the Bucks, both sides had questions about how he'd fit in.
Milwaukee was a beer town, hard workers, not a lot of black people. When I got to Milwaukee, all I'd heard for many, many years was that, yeah, you've done this, but you haven't won a championship.
Oscar's one of the best guards that's ever played the game. But I didn't know if Oscar would be able to rise to the occasion.
You have to play with guys first and find out what they can do under pressure.
It would take some time for the superstars to mesh. But soon enough, the Bucks were overwhelming the competition.
Oscar Robertson and Lou Alcindor, how does it get any better than that?
Pulls up with a 15-footer on the way.
We were the fastest team in the league, and we could score points in bundles. We're just rocking, we're killing people.
The team posted a 66-16 regular season record, and then continued their domination in the playoffs, sweeping the Baltimore Bullets in the finals to win the NBA title, with Alcindor earning MVP honors.
The Milwaukee Bucks are champions of the world! The Milwaukee Bucks are the world champions! These guys wanted to end it tonight. They went out and did it.
For me to win the World Championship was what I'd always hoped for.
Hey, Luke. Luke, congratulations. Oscar just paid you a great compliment. You had a great series. Congratulations. Big help.
Championship was important to me because without Kareem, I couldn't have gotten that.
The fact that I got to play with Oscar, one of the great players in the game who'd never won a world championship. And by partnering up with him, we were both able to be successful.
Soon after the title came a revelation from the Bucks center. He had converted from Catholicism to Islam. And as part of the transformation, he'd changed his name. He was no longer Lou Alcindor, but instead Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
So it's Abdul al-Jabbar and Abdul al-Karim, meaning servant of the noble, servant of the irresistible.
The Milwaukee Bucks signed Lou Alcindor, not Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And you go from a Christian name to a Muslim name. You're gonna catch hell.
We had to get used to it. Instead of calling him Lou Alcindor, started calling him Kareem. He was a Muslim, in Milwaukee. It didn't fit very well.
There was a lot of questions from the press about Islam. This came out of nowhere as far as they were concerned.
But for Kareem, a change had been materializing for years.
I started learning about Islam my freshman year at UCLA. I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, and then I started to read other things. A couple of the other Muslim students gave me a Quran. I had taken on an Islamic identity, tried living the lifestyle, and it seemed to make sense to me. And By 1971, I wanted to do it formally.
I think he felt that he had a platform at this particular point because the team had just won the championship, and it might have a bigger impact and make it more welcome in response. I mean, I think it was more welcome certainly than when Ali had declared he had become a black Muslim. I think Kareem talked about it a little more in terms of the reasons why, and had not the kind of anger that was encapsulated in Ali's coming out, that this was a religion he believed in.
I think that the religion is it's a beautiful religion, you know, if that's what you want.
He's still our son. He regards himself as such. We have that relationship, religion aside.
I never ever wanted to insult my family, but I wanted to have an Islamic identity. I did not feel that name that I was born with would have been my name as a result of the experience of slavery. In fact, it was my dad that introduced me to a friend of his named Hamas. He helped me to understand the difference between Orthodox Islam and what the black Muslims were talking about.
Hamas Abdul Khalis had been a leader in Elijah Muhammad's militant Nation of Islam, or Black Muslims, before bitterly splitting from the group in the late 1950s and creating his own smaller rival sect, the Hanafi movement. In Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Hamas had by far his most high-profile disciple, a follower who had the means to purchase a house in Washington, D.C. that would become the organization's headquarters. It was from there that Hamas guided and oversaw the lives of all his adherents, including the wedding of Kareem and a young woman he'd met in Los Angeles, Janice Brown, who'd also taken on a new name, Habiba, after converting.
I was trying to decide who I was going to marry, and, you know, if I was going to live a moral life, I should be married and not being promiscuous. She was very attractive, very down-to-earth person. She thought that I had some appeal, and we hit it off that way.
Kareem wielded power in his household. When I would go over to visit, the ladies would have to get permission to come into the room. Anything that we would eat would have to be tasted by the ladies first. He was following the rules of a great Muslim leader of the family. And that was what he wanted to be. He wanted to be that shining light.
The marriage would produce 3 children, but it would also serve as a source of a massive rift between Kareem and his parents, who were banned from the wedding by Hamas because they were non-Muslims.
Hamas tried to come between people and their families. That was the worst part of what he did, just the way he isolated everybody. Hamas made us feel like it was us against the world, and it didn't have to be that way.
Here in Washington this evening, 6 persons reported killed in a wave of violence, including shooting at a home owned by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the pro basketball star once named Lou Alcindor.
In 1973, I was a reporter in Chicago, and the Hanafi thing broke in Washington, a house that Kareem had purchased for the Hanafi Muslims.
Police ambulances shuttled back and forth, taking away the bodies, 7 in all.
It's been the most heinous crime that I've witnessed in my 19 years on the police department.
When the massacre happened, I was in Milwaukee. Basically, it had to do with the fact that Hamas had provoked the black Muslims. He said that Elijah Muhammad was a fraud and that the black Muslim movement was not Islamic. And it obviously outraged these people. They sent people to kill him. And when they attacked his house, he wasn't there. They tried to kill all the people that were there. It was a very horrible and ugly incident.
And the massacre, which counted 5 children among the victims, led to concerns about Kareem's own security.
It was very, very, very distracting for the team as well as for Jabbar. We had FBI people following and protecting the team. We had, the Milwaukee Bucks had their own security. We feared for our lives, and he obviously feared for his life more than any of us.
was always used to a spotlight. This was a friggin' laser.
When you have a great athletic career going and then you have all this turmoil on some religious tangent, it doesn't make for a very harmonious life.
While his connection to Hamas grew embroiled in more and more controversy, a measure of balance could be found in his longtime interest in martial arts, particularly in the form of a friendship he'd made in Los Angeles with a rising film star named Bruce Lee.
Bruce and I really were kindred spirits. You know, I enjoyed competition. Bruce enjoyed competition, and Bruce wanted to be the best at what he did. I wanted to be the best at what I did. When we'd work out, it was a challenge for him to box me because my arms were so long. He always said it was like fighting an octopus. And, you know, I made him duck and I made him do things that he didn't have to do when he worked out against other people. He always liked to challenge himself. I had trained with Bruce for 4 years. He said, why don't you come over and we'll do a movie. Shooting a movie in Hong Kong was a great experience. In those movies, if you know anything about martial arts movies, the bad guys are supposed to be in character and they're supposed to be really bad. So I was just trying to absorb that presence because I knew it would work with the film that we were doing.
In 1973, a year after filming his scenes for Game of Death, Kareem spent his summer studying overseas.
I was in Saudi Arabia and Libya studying Arabic, and I was on my way home. I decided to go home through Hong Kong, so maybe I'd get a chance to visit him. And on the day that I was getting ready to leave for Hong Kong, there were headlines in the papers that Bruce had died. I just went on home. It was a very sad day. He was a wonderful human being. I had the good fortune to be his friend, and you know, next thing you know, he was gone. I really miss him.
As personal losses and complications mounted in the early 1970s, even as he won 2 more Most Valuable Player awards, his team failed to win another title, culminating in a heartbreaking 7-game loss in the finals to the Boston Celtics in 1974. The next season, with Robertson retired, the Bucks plunged to last place. It was the first time Abdul-Jabbar had ever played on a losing team. With his contract set to expire the following year, he used his leverage to demand a trade.
Are we ready now, fellas? We've invited you here to share with us the most explosive sports announcement of our time. So join us, won't you, in welcoming the newest Laker, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. We are very happy to announce today we have signed Kareem Abdul-Jabbar to a new 5-year contract.
Do you feel any particular great pressure as a man on the spot that's supposed to bring the championship all of a sudden?
No, not really. Everybody involved knows it's going to take more than one man. I think I'm going to be very instrumental in helping to achieve that aim, but it's going to take more than one man.
Do you feel you can do it?
I know I can do my part of it.
You had the Hope Diamond when you got him. That's who you had. Everyone thought they were going to win championships.
Just like money in the bank every time.
When I came back to Los Angeles, I didn't have very many expectations. I was just happy to make it someplace where I felt at home.
Back in the city where he'd scaled his greatest heights, Kareem won his 4th and 5th MVP awards in his first 2 seasons with the Lakers. But while he instantly made Los Angeles contenders again, he failed to deliver a championship, as the team continually fell short in the playoffs to other, deeper Western Conference powers.
In this league, it's about players. It's about players that fit together. They weren't good enough.
I did take a lot of heat in the press, and there was nothing I could do. I was making the All-Star team, leading the league in all kinds of categories, and we didn't win, and a number of the writers felt that it was me not getting it done, when basically we did not have the right personnel to get it done.
Even though he was dominant, he was empty. You know, I mean, you can be dominant and win scoring titles and be an MVP, but if you're not a champion, you know, what the hell is it worth?
There were also continued difficulties in his personal life, including alienation from Hamas and the Hanafis, and the collapse of his marriage to Habiba.
I know one thing I've heard them, maybe the only thing they agree on, is, they both said that at the time they were young, they were somewhat impressionable. But, you live and you hope you learn.
Because I was doing it for purely ideological reasons, it didn't take the way it should have. My marriage broke up because of that. But it wasn't my wife's fault. It was my fault. I just didn't know what I was doing.
At times, Kareem's frustration could boil over on the court. Never more dramatically than 2 minutes into opening night of the 1977-78 season, when he squared up with Buck center Kent Benson.
I don't want to say, he deserved it, but he did.
Everybody that's played basketball for any length of time knows that you're going to run into an elbow, you're going to get clipped by somebody's shoulder or run into somebody's hip. Those things happen. It's intentional things you really tend to resent.
He took a swing at me and hit me with an elbow in my solar plexus, knocked all the wind out of me.
It was just a dirty play on Benson's part.
All I wanted to do was retaliate, and I did.
I didn't see it. I heard it. This loud crack.
Kent paid the price for everyone else that had tried to rough me up and gotten away with it. I was ready to fight everybody at that point.
A broken hand from the punch would leave him sidelined for 2 months. The incident, meanwhile, perpetuated a frosty, at times even irritable aura that had surrounded him dating back to his days at UCLA.
I don't smile because they don't say anything funny. I mean, I just react to people the way they come off. If you come off like you don't know anything, that's how I'm going to react to you.
He did not have a lot of patience with the public. He did not have a lot of patience with fans. I think in the late 70s, he became more distant.
Kind of aloof, shy. He just didn't feel comfortable in the environment that other players did.
Unfriendly might have been correct at the time, but I think Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is one of the most misunderstood people ever in sports.
People saw me as just a very serious person who didn't have any fun or enjoy anything. I've already been typecast as the brooding black guy. I think it had a lot to do with the era that we were raised in. I had to toe a certain line and not be too controversial or too much my own man. I just seemed to be like Mr. Grump. So being able to poke fun of my image was fun and changed people's minds.
Wait a minute, I know you. You're Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. You play basketball for the Los Angeles Lakers.
I'm sorry, son, but you must have me confused with someone else. My name is Roger Murdoch. I'm the co-pilot.
Our original idea for the role of the co-pilot in Airplane was Pete Rose. But then when we shot it, I think we started shooting it in the summer, and so he was active in baseball at the time, and gambling, of course.
So kind of late into the game, we rewrote the part for Kareem because we also were huge fans.
I think you're the greatest, but my dad says you don't work hard enough on defense. And he says that lots of times you don't even run down court. And that you don't really try, except during the playoffs.
Listen, kid.
I've been hearing that crap ever since I was at UCLA. I'm out there busting my buns every night.
It was easy to write dialogue for Kareem because back in those days, on a slow news day, if you wanted to take shots at Kareem, you would go to his defense and whether he works as hard during the regular season as he does during the playoffs.
It was great for the Zucker brothers and great for the film world, and I'm sure fun for Kareem. But I think for us, it said, oh, Kareem's doing comedy. He's not mad. And if there's a time when comedy, we talk about how it heals and how it cures so many ills, it was a public relations cure for Kareem's ill, because after that movie, I think the world kind of exhaled and said, ah, I think it's all right to like him.
While Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's personality may have long been hard to figure, through all the highs and lows of the 1970s, his dominance as a player took on an almost mystical component, thanks to the shot he'd been perfecting ever since he'd first walked onto a basketball court. The skyhook.
This is my body, and this is where I want to go. This is what I'm going to do, and there's nothing you can do about it. And we were all helpless.
He's like a watch, one of the best watches in the world, the precision that he had.
By using movement to a place where I can get the shot off at 8 feet, I knew I could make those shots on a regular basis.
He jumps so high, and he's got his body in between the defensive player and the ball.
There's no way for a defender to even get near him.
It's the prettiest shot that I've ever seen in my life.
I tell you one thing, you can't guard it. You just couldn't guard it.
The leap with grace and with style, and then, you know, the aiming and throwing the ball down.
And once he got up here and he had his eyeballs on the rim, forget it. Lee cruise missile, the most unstoppable weapon in the history of the NBA.
And that ball just taking its time. Shh. That's nice. That's nice.
There's a new sports magnate in Hollywood. Dr. Jerry Buss, a real estate mogul and former rocket scientist, is now the owner of pro basketball's Los Angeles Lakers and the Forum, the team's home arena in Inglewood, California.
When Jerry Buss bought the Lakers in 1979, his unabashed focus was on increasing the star power at the Forum in every respect.
He brought in live band, he brought in the Laker girls, and he made it the place to be.
Lakers, #1.
I think the Lakers are great. Fantastic.
With Abdul-Jabbar, Buss had arguably the league's most talented player. And with his first draft pick, he instantly acquired its brightest new personality to boot.
The Los Angeles Lakers select Earvin Magic Johnson, Michigan State, 6'8", 200 pounds.
I was such a Kareem freak. I mean, I loved Kareem before I actually came to the Lakers. So when I got to the Lakers, they said, uh-oh, you're gonna be Kareem's rookie. I said, great, I'm excited, what I need to do? So, you know, I went over to Kareem, what do you need? You know, and I'm like this 2-year-old, you know, going up to him. He said, well, I like 2 Gatorades after every timeout or break in practice. And I want you to get my newspaper, have it at my door every morning. I said, what else? You know, I was just so excited to just be a part of his life because I wanted to get up under him and learn a lot.
The rookie's elation about playing alongside Kareem and being a Laker was on full display in his very first NBA game.
Hayward is out there. Magic Johnson and Kareem. Ford sends it to Kareem. Sky hook up and good. Lakers win. And Magic Johnson is out there celebrating like they just won the NCAA championship.
What the hell is he doing? We played 1 game. You only have 81 more to play.
Kareem immediately recognized the value that was there, but it was like, will you please turn it down? I mean, you know, can you just turn it off sometimes?
He didn't stop his enthusiasm, but he had so much respect for Kareem, he didn't come in and just take over the leadership role.
So we figured out, you know, how we could help each other. He knew how to get me the ball. I knew how to help him on defense.
Kareem just sort of said, you lead the team and you throw me the ball, you know?
All of a sudden, people had to focus on him to make sure that he wasn't the guy that was going to beat them, and that gave me opportunities.
He was unstoppable. The bigger the moment, the better he plays, the more dominant he becomes.
The world's best are prepared to go head-to-head for the sport's most prestigious title, the National Basketball Association Championship.
Together that season, Magic and Kareem led the Lakers to the finals for the first time since 1973, where they'd face off against Julius Erving and the Philadelphia 76ers. The team split the series' first 4 games, and then in a tight Game 5, Abdul-Jabbar was dominating the offensive end.
Kareem turns underneath, puts it up and scores on a finger roll. 5, but Kareem's hurt. Kareem turned an ankle.
If you're there, you're saying this isn't going to continue without Kareem.
I don't think Kareem is going to be able to go anymore right now.
It was so unusual for him to be heard. No matter how bad it was, he was always there.
And he was in tremendous pain. He brought him back out for the 4th quarter.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who is now just returning for the final period. He will try to play despite a painful sprained ankle. Kareem comes in on Caldwell.
He really plays the last quarter on one foot. He goes head-to-head with Dr. J, and he really wins Game 5.
After the game, I was just like, wow, what am I going to do now? Because I need like 2 weeks for this to heal. We got to play Philadelphia in a couple of days. I wish I could do something, but you feel very helpless.
I don't think any of us knew how bad it was until we get to the airport and they say he can't play. So we got to figure out how we're going to replace not just his points, but also, too, his defensive skills. We didn't know how we were going to do that. And Kareem was really a guy who you can't replace.
You are looking live at the sold-out crowd at the Spectrum in Philadelphia.
Kareem remained back in Los Angeles when the team traveled to Philly. His Laker co-star, meanwhile, would take his place for the opening tip.
A young man by the name of Magic Johnson is going to start at center. Ball goes up high now, high.
Magic's performance would be one for the NBA annals.
Another assist for Magic.
And the Lakers won the game and the title.
There it is, it's over, and the most valuable player is Magic Johnson. 42 points, 15 rebounds, and 7 assists. He starts at center, plays forward and guard, and leads the Los Angeles Lakers to a world championship 123-107 over Philadelphia without Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And the Lakers...
I just tried to do my best and help the team win, and it's been beautiful.
I think that's really a capper to it. Was Sport Magazine naming you the MVP? You have some few words to say to the big fella back in L.A.?
Yeah, big fella, we love you. We did it for you, and we want you to get up and dance a little bit tonight. I know that ankle is fun, but get up for us.
So we fly home, they're all celebrating, and when we arrive back in LA, all of a sudden this Kareem bolts into the plane. He's just beaming.
And they opened the door. Instead of us going out, he came in.
Didn't even wait for your boy. Hey, man, they got everything waiting for y'all, man. All the ladies, all the champagne.
What are you talking about, y'all? Us.
I'm the valet now.
Kareem just dominated that series. He was averaging over 30 points in that series. He was actually the MVP.
Magic offered to give me the trophy, and I was like, no, we're not going to let that be an issue between us.
He helped me because I wanted to be a champion and a winner, and I helped him because he loosened up.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar has been almost as difficult to profile as to guard.
He has spoken candidly on television only rarely, and he has shielded his private life jealously. But now, Kareem is changing, and the story of his change is only incidentally a sports story. It is more of a love story.
He'd first introduced himself to Cheryl Pistono on an escalator in Los Angeles, but she didn't reciprocate his interest until he took her to watch him play in a celebrity game at Dodger Stadium, and then climbed the upper deck to get her.
And I'm thinking to myself, he's not really doing this, because everyone stopped watching the game down there and started to watch him as he walked up to me and took my hand and walked me out of the stadium. And at that moment, I fell. I fell off the Grand Canyon. I never, ever saw him as a basketball player. I fell in love with a man. Charming, enigmatic, gentle, kind. We would have these discussions about politics and religion and the economy, and he was an amazing human being.
Cheryl was a pretty outgoing person. That was a wonderful thing for me. She was a Buddhist, I was Muslim. We cared about each other and really appreciated each other.
She was also instrumental in repairing a rupture in his life that had persisted for years.
I'd been separated from my parents and a lot of my friends because Hamas felt that anybody outside the community was suspicious. Cheryl said that, your parents are your parents. They love you whether you're Muslim or not. You need to have them back in your life.
So I surprised him and flew them to LA, and eventually they moved to Los Angeles. He's very much a family person. He was happy to have his parents in his life.
In 1981, Cheryl gave birth to Kareem's fourth child, Amir.
After Amir was born, he held him up in his arms and he named him at that moment. And you saw a love that I've never seen. I gave birth to him, so I know he's mine, okay? Beyond that, he's really a mirror image of his father.
One of the things that I got from my father was a lot of Japanese samurai movies. We used to watch those countless times. Music is another thing. I really enjoy jazz music, and if it weren't for my dad's influence, I definitely wouldn't have been introduced to it and have an appreciation for it. I think my brother's experience was different than mine in terms of our father's presence. I spent more time with him, when I was younger.
He's my father, but he felt more kind of like my uncle, just because, of seeing him sporadically. I remember he did an interview at the time where he described himself as Uncle Dad. But, at the same time, I knew that food was always on the table. We never had to worry about, paying the bills or getting books for school or things like that. And I knew it was because he made a good living being an athlete.
I didn't have nearly enough with them that I should have. That's something that you regret. But after I realized that pursuing Islam in the way that Hamas had thought was ideal, that wasn't the right way to live. Once I figured that out, I did a much better job, and things went better for me.
And as the 80s continued, things continued to get better and better for the Lakers as well. 11 games into the 81-82 season, Pat Riley became LA's interim head coach and immediately increased the team's offensive tempo. And with that, the Showtime era took off.
It was fresh, and it was very intense defensively and offensively.
All the different elements of that team, the joy of Magic and Kareem, who was used so beautifully, Byron, Worthy, and Cooper, and the coach in the Armani suits, it was phenomenal.
The centerpiece was the scene. If you weren't in the Forum Club, you were a fucking nobody, okay? The players would go, the opposing team would go, all the girls were there. Now, we'd all be going this way, and down that long, dark tunnel would be Kareem. He didn't want any part of that.
He would go in the locker room and he'd got to be jumping around all over the place. He'd be reading his book.
He would never look up. Never. Kareem was just a different piece of toast, man.
By January of 1983, he was 35 years old, but still an all-star, averaging more than 20 points a game for a team defending another championship. Then came a harsh reminder of just how much else he had to lose.
Officials said fire today caused an estimated $3 million damage to the Bel Air home of Los Angeles Lakers star Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
I was in Boston. We had played the Celtics, and I got a call like at 5 or 6 in the morning from Cheryl, who I was living with at the time. And she said that the house had burned down. And I said, what? She said the house had burned down. I said, come on. She said nobody was hurt, but the house was burned down, everything burned down in it. And I couldn't believe that.
I'll never forget as long as I live when he picked me up on the way in town to take me to see his house, that he was so calm, you know, like he usually is. And we look at it, just devastated place. It just down to the ground, man. The rugs were burned up, all of his trophies were melted, everything.
The losses also included his extensive jazz collection, which he'd been accumulating for decades, all the way back to when his father had first introduced him to music.
My first thought was Kareem there? Is he okay? And that jazz collection, and if it had survived, and if it didn't, how devastating that would be.
For him to endure this tremendous fire and have his house burned down and so much of his jazz collection destroyed, I'm sure that tore at his heartstrings.
He and his dad would just go in there and just get lost in music. And when that burned, it's like someone put an arrow in his heart.
It didn't take him long to realize that his son was alive. And that so far outweighed anything that was lost in the fire.
Kareem and Cheryl Pistono parted ways later in 1983, though they'd remained close as the years went on. Meanwhile, a year after the fire, came one of the biggest milestones of his career, not to mention a chance to pass an old friend in the record book.
Tonight, fans, a possible history-making basketball moment. Kareem needs just 21 points tonight to pass Wilt Chamberlain and become basketball's all-time leading scorer.
I really felt a strong connection to Wilt in that I had known him since I was in grade school. And here I was getting ready to break his record. I had a dream about it. We were running in the woods, and I'm trying to pass him. It's like a long, you know, a cross-country race.
Magic look. It says to Kareem, come on down here, big fella.
I remember talking to Irvin, and he said, I don't know what the situation's going to be. I don't know what the time's going to be. But I'll tell you one thing. There's no way anybody else is going to pass him the ball but me when he breaks the record.
Everybody's waving their arms. It's into Kareem.
Kareem, he did like a little ballet. He went back baseline, threw about a 15-foot hook shot.
Kareem swing left, right hand, 12-footer, good! They love their captain. They love their leader. And suffice to say, ladies and gentlemen, the new king of scoring has ascended his throne. His mama.
2 decades had passed since Wilt had taken the kid from New York under his wing. Over that time, Kareem had hardly followed in his one-time mentor's footsteps, off or on the court.
They were completely opposite. Completely opposite. Chamberlain was more about force and strength. Kareem was more about finesse and ballet-like. I mean, they were just completely opposite, but yet they were alike. They were 2 apples, and depending on which apple you like to eat the best, that's who they were. Each of them had a different effect on how the game was played.
Why aren't you guys closer?
Well, I would say that, athletes are really tough people they have a lot of pride, understand? They're very, very competitive, and him and I are natural rivals.
There was not a whole lot of love lost. And I think it was more from Kareem's side, again, as the competitor. He's the guy that I got to take out. He's the guy that I got to surpass. He's the guy that I got to beat.
Wilt Chamberlain, for whatever reason, was jealous of Kareem, and Wilt never missed an opportunity to attack Kareem in print. At one time, he had a quote that he says, "I named my dog Kareem, but I spell it with a C because my dog has a heart." I think that really hurt Kareem.
Wilt had a big ego, and he started taking shots at me. And when that happened, I didn't like it, you know, and I let him know about it. I let anybody who asked me know about it. That's when things more or less went south.
You hear the crowd is chanting, "Beat L.A."
Beat L.A., that's great. Let's listen.
Surpassing Wilt Chamberlain, at least in one way, brought his career full circle. But as Kareem remained an impact player deep into his 30s, he became part of another kind of rivalry that took over basketball's center stage.
You know, we don't often have a series which people anticipate that become reality. This is one that has. People have been chewing about it and talking about it for a long time, and today it's going to happen.
I mean, the 1984 finals were as fierce a rivalry as I've ever seen.
Lakers are leading Game 4 against the Celtics, up 2-1. Next thing you know, Rambis is cruising in at the other end of the court when he just got taken down by a really hard foul.
Instead of us keeping our cool, you know, we turned into a bunch of street fighters.
Bird fights Kareem, swings the elbow, and now is Gillen and Larry Bird. Jaw to jaw.
He tried to take my head off. If he would have connected, I bet I'd still be asleep. You know, I mean, it was so close. I could feel the wind off his elbow, and wasn't too happy.
And they better pull him apart.
Our whole thing was retaliation, trying to get back, and I should have tried to quell that more than I did, and so we ended up losing in '84.
Final second. Cooper goes for three. It's over. The Boston Celtics are the NBA World Champions.
I was feeling so bad, so down. I was crying, staying in my house all the time because I let the team down. I made crucial mistakes to lose that series. He said, "Buck, you know, I'm with you, man. Don't worry about you. We're going to play them again." And we were just hanging out, just talking as guys. And that was the breakthrough.
All of us looked at each other that summer and looked at that loss as really the turning point, I think, in the dynasty that came 5 years after that.
The next season, the Lakers made it back to the finals for the rematch they wanted with the Celtics. But in the series opener, LA's center suddenly and unexpectedly looked his age.
So now it's 1985 at the Boston Celtics and Los Angeles Lakers. It's Game 1, the NBA Finals, and there we all are again. And Kareem had just a horrible night.
I tell you, Parrish has beaten Jabbar off the court every single time.
Every newspaper was calling him an old man. This is the Over the Hill gang.
You know, it's over. He's too old.
I mean, he was brutally criticized by the press, and I felt for the guy.
It was like I got to the game late, and I was trying to catch everybody as they ran away from me on the court. You know, I wasn't there.
The next day, we come in for a film session. He was the first guy sitting there in the center seat in the first row, right in front of the video. And he looked up at me and he said, "Give it to me, and don't stop." I was hammering him and yelling at him, "Gotta have more guts than that, Cap. Come on, Cap, you're better than this." We go to practice and we spend the next 2 hours just rebounding and transition drills. And Magic finally comes up to me and says, "Coach, you're gonna have to save him. He'll be dead by Thursday night." Kareem overheard the conversation and said, "No, don't take me out. I'm doing it all. What everybody else does, I'm doing it."
We all were just feeling bad, how bad Boston beat us. So we come down for the bus for game 2. And Pat Riley had a rule, can't nobody ride on the bus.
And so I look out the window, and he's running towards the bus, and his father is coming with him.
And then Mr. Alcindor gets on.
Okay, maybe they just came on to say hi to him, you know. And the next moment, the door closes, and the bus takes off.
You know, here's the oldest guy on the team. You know, why you riding with your dad? You know what I mean? I still, to this day, don't know what that meant, but it gave us something.
You know, having my dad there was someone familiar that I trusted and someone that wanted to see me succeed.
Maybe the most important game that the Lakers ever played, and it might have been one of the most important games that he ever played, that he needed the solace of his father's wisdom.
When he was backed into a corner, who he reached out to. It wasn't one of us. It was his parents. And that says a lot to me about Kareem and who he was and who he is as a man.
Pat Riley levied much of his first game criticism on Kareem Abdul-Jabbar after the most embarrassing loss in team history.
He conjured up something from 1973, and he moved like a graceful gazelle, like a young kid.
I'll tell you, he is playing like a rookie. Watch him come over on this shot.
I can remember him taking Robert Parrish and Kevin McHale to school as if they were midgets.
His position on the offensive end was harder. He was contesting shots. He was moving to help. I mean, he was just all over the court. He sucked it up. There's nothing we could do.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar has come back with a vengeance. 30 points and 16 rebounds, and he indeed has been the spearhead for this Laker comeback.
I just ratcheted everything up and said, hey, you know, I got to get back to what I know that I can do.
If you watched him tonight play with tremendous passion and lead us, got every big rebound, without him tonight, we're an average team.
They had buried him, and he came up, like, stuck his hand up out of the grave and said no.
Well, it feels good, you know, to know that you're not dead. You know, they had people throwing dirt on my face. It's good to know that that was a little premature.
LA took 2 of the next 3 at home and then looked to close it out on enemy grounds.
And welcome to the Boston Garden, which through the years has been the home court advantage. It's Game 6, and the Lakers are just one victory away from a world championship and ending one of the longest jinxes in the history of professional sport. The tip controlled by Boston. Fall away. Kareem tips it in. Kareem. And it's the Lakers dominating the offensive glass. 4 on the shot clock. Kareem goes up and stuffs it through.
We saw that he was animated and ready to play, and it was great.
Maxwell against Kupchak, blocked by Kareem. Kareem hits again with a skyhook.
What that was, that's who he was inside. He was a champion.
3 in 6 years, LA comes to Boston and wins the world title.
Kareem never gloats. It's just not his personality. But for that one time, he's got this smile on his face like, I got you, and I'm still here. Don't count me out.
It's a great feeling to beat the Boston Celtics and to beat them in Boston. You know, we're the only team ever to win a world championship in Boston other than the Boston Celtics.
The Lakers would win 2 more titles back-to-back in 1987 and 88. The championships made it 6 in all for Kareem, alongside 6 MVP awards, more than any other player in history, as well as a record 19 All-Star Game appearances. Now past 40, he was still playing a significant role for the league's best team. But at the dawn of the 1989 campaign, he announced he'd finally be retiring at season's end. and what ensued over the next several months was evidence of just how far a road he'd traveled.
When Kareem retired, he had his farewell tour, and it was the last chance for everybody to finally give this guy his due. People that would boo him and call him, the N-word his whole life.
The tour went to every arena in the league, and at every stop, the response was the same, even the Boston Garden.
He didn't have any clue how well they were going to receive him.
What he's done for the game is unparalleled. We don't want him to forget anything about this building. It's got to happen. We've got to give him a piece of this floor.
I was proud of our fans. They respected the man, and they gave him a hell of an ovation.
When you begin to characterize what truly the greatest player of all time would be a dominant player and his longevity. Kareem played for 20 years. I mean, you got to put him right there at the top with all of these guys.
He's on my Mount Rushmore. I always tell people, when you think about what he's meant to LA sports and what he's meant to the NBA and what he's meant to young players like myself, it's off the charts. And so I'm just happy that I got a chance to play alongside of him. I'm just happy that we can call each other friends.
The retirement tour's official final goodbye came on the final Sunday of the season, with family and former teammates crowding the arena to bid farewell to a star who looked perhaps more at ease than ever before in the Forum's spotlight.
He wanted his hand to be steady in that whole thing. He wanted to be the guy who had the character that John wouldn't talk to him about. And I thought to myself, oh my God. Just as he started to say hello, he said goodbye.
First of all, I got to give thanks to these folks right here, my mom and my dad. When your dad is a cop and your mom believes in what's right, that they set exacting standards for you, and I tried to live up to them. And they did it with a lot of love and a lot of patience. Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Dad. Thank you very much. I want to thank these four little people over here because my relationship with them was not what it could have been because I had to come out here on this court. And they never responded with anything other than love and appreciation. And I love you guys. And it's wonderful to have you here at this moment. Thank you. As you go along the path of life, you meet people that have an influence on you, people that can turn you the right way at the right time. And I've been very fortunate to know a number of people like that. I'm thinking about one of my teachers in grade school, Sister Hannah. She was beautiful. My high school coach, Jack Donahue. Then I came out to a place called Los Angeles and hooked up with a very wonderful man named John Wooden. Finally, I got to come back out here and play here in this building. And that has been a wonderful experience because I've gotten an opportunity to share that with you people. We've grown together and learned to appreciate each other and appreciate this great game that we play. I certainly could not have had a professional life if I did not get to work with people of this caliber who care and who are my friends. I've run out of words. I'm losing my voice, and I want to say I love you all. Thank you very much.
What do you see for yourself 20 years from now?
I don't know, maybe I'll be sitting on the beach with you sipping a cool drink.
Let's make a date. We'll make a date.
So many years later, Maybe what he has now is indeed all Kareem Abdul-Jabbar ever wanted. A life that's become about so much more than basketball. An identity as a writer, commentator, and activist that served as a significant epilogue to his athletic career. Looking back, he almost had no choice but to embrace all the game gave him. It just took some time for the man to get there.
It's pretty amazing to have taken this journey. You don't really understand it as you're going through it. A lot of times I turn people off with my reticence about personal engagement. It's just something that has to do with the fact that I've been shy all of my life. But it had nothing to do with any disrespect or lack of appreciation of the fans. When I've gone through some of the trials of middle age and dealing with leukemia and heart troubles and stuff, and all of the fans that send their best wishes and their prayers, it's awesome, and I really appreciate it, and I'm thankful for it.